So with Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe Part 4, we of course get the conclusion of this story. And what we're going to see is that all the pieces are going to fall into place, that we're going to fully understand what it is that Deadpool's doing, but more specifically, the story is going to end in a really interesting way. It's going to end in a way that I think is really unique and something that really could have only been done with a Deadpool story. Now, as we start this comic, we pick up with the press, with the media, as they're covering some kind of massive, onslaught or event. And what we're learning is that various superheroes and supervillains are all fighting one another. They're all killing one another. And what the press is telling us here is that this appears to be perhaps some kind of a brutal war that's going on. No one really understands what's taking place, but they know that it's most likely due to the fallout of the actions of Deadpool, who's been going about and killing various superheroes and supervillains. In addition, the press points our direction to the top of one of the buildings, and what we see are superheroes and supervillains who are standing on top of this building and throwing themselves off. And this is really interesting to us because what this does is it more or less just gives us this explanation that Deadpool himself didn't actually kill every single superhero directly, that these other superheroes and supervillains were killed by various means. And as the press is giving us this explanation in terms of how society is viewing these actions, that while some of them claim it's the end of days and some of them claim that it's the hubris of superheroes and supervillains finally catching up to them, we see that somebody is presumably using a sniper rifle and is looking at these various individuals. Ultimately, the view of this person switches to a window, and it appears as though he's currently aiming at Deadpool. And what we learn is that this person is Frank Castle, and Frank Castle takes this time to shoot Deadpool through the window that he was aiming at. And so from here, Frank Castle immediately takes off, telling us that he's going to try to get back to Deadpool to kill him before his healing factor comes into play. But once Frank Castle gets into the apartment he had shot into, and he takes off the mask of Deadpool, he realizes this is not Deadpool, that this is in fact Puppet Master, and that Puppet Master had been using puppets that he had created of various superheroes and supervillains to force these people against their will to jump off the building or else engage in conflict with one another. And what we learn is that Deadpool is in fact in this room, and Deadpool sneaks up behind Frank Castle. And of course, Deadpool has one of the puppets that had been made by Puppet Master in the form of Frank Castle, and he begins to mock Frank Castle. He begins to poke fun at him with regards to Frank Castle's war journal and so on. But what Deadpool does is he uses the doll to point a gun that it's holding at its own head, thereby forcing Frank Castle to point a gun at his head. And of course, Deadpool simulates the doll pulling the trigger, and Frank Castle shoots himself in the head. And so from here, we hear that Deadpool is talking about how he has a much bigger scheme going on, that Frank Castle, whenever he was involved in his escapades, had always been on the small level. He'd always done small things, but Deadpool has much bigger plans in terms of what he wants to achieve. And so from here, we transition to the layer of the Man-Thing. And what we have is we have a circumstance whereby Taskmaster, that his search for Deadpool has led him to the Florida Everglades. And so as he's transitioning through this place, as he's moving around, he finally comes across Deadpool. And what he tells Deadpool is that he's been chasing him for quite some time, and that everything that's taken place will come to an end at this location within the Everglades. That perhaps a time will come when maybe the actions of Deadpool will be forgotten, but the third voice in Deadpool's head says they don't want to be forgotten, that they don't want to have ever existed in the first place. And so what we notice here, and this is something very important as we continue with this story, is that Taskmaster overhears the third voice in Deadpool's head. He hears what it is the third voice is saying. Now again, this will become important in the next few pages, but what we have is where Deadpool simply replies to, replying to Taskmaster saying that he didn't say anything, that he didn't actually say anything out loud. And so Taskmaster doesn't seem to initially catch on to this, but what Deadpool says is that he's glad Taskmaster showed up, that all these other individuals, all these other aliens, and all these other people who had the capability of reading minds had done what they could to stop Deadpool, but in the end, it would most likely be Taskmaster. And the reason why, as it's explained to us as far as Deadpool in his discussion, is that Taskmaster has the ability to begin mimicking people, that he's able to predict what it is they're going to do because he can mimic them. And as he mimics Deadpool, he begins to think like Deadpool. He begins to function like Deadpool. And when he does, he begins to realize what it is that Deadpool is getting into, what it is that Deadpool's trying to achieve. And Deadpool tells Taskmaster this. He, of course, with his third voice, points out that Taskmaster is beginning to mimic his reflexes, beginning to mimic what it is that Deadpool is doing. And so the third voice tells Deadpool to have Taskmaster open his eyes, to have Taskmaster understand what's taking place. And so Deadpool speaks directly to Taskmaster in saying that every time he imitates somebody, he in effect eventually becomes that person so long as he is fighting them. And so Taskmaster realizes what it is that Deadpool's doing here. But before he's actually able to do anything else, Deadpool tells Taskmaster that it can be frightening, that he knows it can be scary, but that individuals who show fear within the Florida Everglades will burn at the touch of the Man-Thing. And so we see that the Man-Thing arrives and it destroys Taskmaster. And so from here, Deadpool begins talking with the Man-Thing, begins conversing with the Man-Thing, and sort of relating to the Man-Thing here, saying that the Man-Thing doesn't really have much of a valuable existence, that he simply just shows up, he protects the Nexus of Realities, and that's it. There's really no other purpose in his life. And so it appears as though the Man-Thing is beginning to understand what it is that Deadpool wants to do. The Man-Thing is beginning to maybe empathize with Deadpool. We don't exactly know what his mindset is here, but ultimately it's revealed to us that the Man-Thing sacrifices itself in order for Deadpool to achieve its goal. And so the Man-Thing explodes, and when he explodes, he more or less reveals the portal to the Nexus of All Realities. And so what we see is Deadpool entering this Nexus of All Realities. And what happens here is a third voice comes into play. The third voice says that this is only the beginning, that Deadpool basically has his work cut out for him. But what Deadpool is hunting for is the, I guess, the center of all realities, the point at which all of the other realities stem from, effectively the location, or I guess the real world, where the writers are, where they're making all these different realities. And so what we see is that Deadpool eventually rises within the real world. And when he does, he begins looking around, he begins hunting around, and he comes across a room. And when he does, all the writers that are currently writing Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe are talking about what it is that Deadpool is going to be doing. And so as they're writing this story, Deadpool is currently trying to track them down. And so what happens as the story begins to come to a close is that Deadpool begins to enter the room, but before he does, he looks back, he breaks the fourth wall, and he tells us as the reader that he's going to be coming for us as soon as he's finished here. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you guys want to see more Deadpool videos, let me know, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.